Hello and welcome to Pensions Europe's webinar, Future-Proofing Retirement in Europe, the Need for More Funded Pensions. This webinar is part of the European Retirement Week 2024. My name is Matti Leppälä. I'm the Secretary General of Pensions Europe. Hello from Brussels. This webinar will start first with 6 videos that we have recorded. So some key themes and messages from first the European Commission, looking at the pension adequacy issues and the role of Europe in pension policy, followed by views from Germany, from BASF pension fund, and more broadly, how does the pension landscape and the challenges look like in Germany. After that, we will have views from Belgium and the Netherlands, looking at pension challenges, gender pension cap, diversity in pension administration. And then the last 2 will be first from Lithuania, where there has been great success in increasing the coverage of pension funds, but then there's a question whether these pension savings will provide an adequate income and what should be done. And finally, we have a video from our member in Portugal with the challenges there and the need for more funded pensions, how auto-enrollment can be a solution, and also looking at the pan-European personal pension product and the importance of developing that further. And after these videos, we will have a discussion with experts and some of Pensions Europe's members. But first, let's turn to the videos, and these videos are also available on our YouTube channel and on LinkedIn, and of course in Pensions Europe website as well.
When we speak about pension adequacy, we normally understand 3 things. Firstly, how well protected older people are against poverty. Secondly, to what extent pensions replace former income from work when people retire. And thirdly, whether people can spend a reasonable share of their life in retirement. These are the 3 dimensions. Importantly, we do not define what level of performance is considered adequate in each of these 3 dimensions. There is obviously a trade-off, for instance, between income replacement and pension duration, and it's the prerogative of national governments to decide what is the right balance for them. However, if you are underperforming in several of these dimensions, it is clear that you have a problem. We see that since 2015, old age poverty in Europe has been gradually rising. This is primarily because of relative income poverty, because the incomes of older people have been growing less rapidly than the incomes of the working age population. So it's not all bad news. If we look at material and social deprivation, that is absolute poverty, we see that the situation has been improving. The average European works 2 years to earn 1 year in retirement, or 41 years of working life and 21 years of retirement on average. However, this average hides very significant country differences. In some countries, it is enough to work 1.5 years to earn 1 year in retirement. In other countries, it's as much as 2.5 years of work for 1 year of retirement. So again, the situation is very diverse. The majority of older people in Europe are women, yet women are less protected in old age than men. Old age poverty is higher for women than for men in all member states of the EU. More than 1 in 5 women aged 65 and above are at risk of poverty or social exclusion. In higher age, 75 and above, it becomes 1 in 4 women. This is clearly not acceptable in 2024. Although the difference between the pensions of men and women has been slowly decreasing, women's pensions are still 25% lower than men's on average. First of all, women receive lower wages than men. Then their careers are typically shorter and more interrupted, not least because of breaks and due to care reasons. Finally, women more often work part-time. All these inequalities are aggregated over the working life and then reflected in the gender pension gap. It is important to remember as well that women live longer than men. That's why they frequently are left alone in advanced old age. And this is when the gender pension gap comes into sharp focus. And women are exposed in particularly high poverty risks in advanced old age. This is also linked to the need for long-term care. First of all, it is important to have equal pensionable ages for men and women. We can sometimes still encounter the notion that a lower pension age is somehow a privilege. Well, it is hardly a privilege if it means a high risk of being poor when you grow older. Then pension systems can also provide pension credits for career breaks, in particular for career breaks linked to care obligations. This is an important step to making pensions more gender neutral. Finally, we have to look at social protection systems for old age together. So together on pensions and long-term care provision to see how the two systems interact to protect both men and women in their old age. If supplementary pensions are to play a bigger role in income replacement in old age, they also need to protect career breaks like public pensions do, at least the childcare breaks. This is a very clear recommendation from the high-level group on supplementary pensions, and the Commission has followed up on it by commissioning a study on care credits in occupational pension schemes, which shows that such credits are feasible and indeed they can be financed in a sustainable way. Well, since 2020, we observed several trends in pension reforms. First of all, member states are working to make pension systems more accessible, including for people in different kinds of employment and different economic statuses. Secondly, we still see a number of reforms that are aimed to promote longer working lives. However, in these last years, they mostly do that through incentives and other soft measures, such as increasingly flexible retirement pathways. Thirdly, a lot of member states have been taking steps to protect the most vulnerable older people through enhancing minimum and basic benefits. There are two interesting developments. Firstly, in parallel to the other reform trends, a number of member states have been taking steps to enhance funded pension schemes and individual saving. At the same time, funded pension assets have experienced significant volatility during recent years, in particular during the COVID crisis. They definitely can, and they should. The high-level group on supplementary pensions called for building of broad and inclusive supplementary pension schemes while respecting the diversity of national systems. Very recently, in the political guidelines for the new commission, President von der Leyen outlined the plans for a savings and investment union. This will help to harness individual savings to boost European capital markets and at the same time to boost the pension adequacy of older people. Well, there are several issues that need to be tackled, as noted by the high-level group. Firstly, of course, the saving capacity of people. Here, the right incentives, tailored, for instance, to different income groups, are important. Secondly, when we move to a greater role for supplementary pensions, it also means that people have a greater responsibility for their own retirement income. Pension awareness and pension literacy is very important. Among other things, lower pension awareness of women is one of the reasons that contributes to the gender pension gap. The times have certainly been interesting lately. We had the COVID pandemic, and just as we were going out of it, we had the cost of living crisis exacerbated by Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine. Remarkably, European pension systems and social protection systems more broadly did remarkably well in protecting older Europeans. The current living standards and purchasing power were protected, and also the future pensions were protected, for instance, because people enrolled in temporary work schemes, as a rule, earn pension rights. The world is changing. The demographic situation in Europe is changing, and the labor markets are changing. And pensions need to change to continue playing their social role. The European Commission stands ready to continue working with member states and with pension stakeholders to make sure that this change can happen for the benefit of Europeans and for the benefit of the pension industry.
Welcome to BASF. My name is Beate Petri, and today we are here at the Ludwigshafen site of the world's leading chemical company. I'm the head of Global Pension and Benefits, and I'm the upcoming chairwoman of the Association of Occupational Pensions in Germany. And today I'm going to tell you something about the German pension system, how we do it at BASF, and what we need from the European Union. Like in many other member states, in Germany, we feel the pressure of shifting demography. This causes a lot of problems in our German statutory pay-as-you-go pension system. The people need supplementary income in order to maintain their standard of living and to prevent old age poverty. We have a strong second pillar occupational pension system, which delivers adequate and reliable pensions and does have a lot of advantages over personal pension products. However, we see the need to increase participation in the second pillar in the occupational pension system, as approximately 55% of employees are only taking part at the moment. BASF's own IORP, the BASF Pensionskasse, was founded in 1888. For nearly 1.5 centuries, we enable stable and adequate pensions for our former employees in retirement. Our employees are automatically enrolled into our occupational pension system, and they benefit from substantial employers' contributions. Our apprentices are included by collective agreement. We have a long tradition in Germany to include employee representation into decision-making, which guarantees that their view is always looked at when taking decisions. At BASF, we tell our employees it's important that they plan their retirement. No, not that they plan their retirement, that they plan their financial situation during retirement. And this cannot be done too early. So what are we doing? We found a way to explain the complex pension system of our occupational pension, of our IOP, of our BASF Pensionskasse in easy words. And we try to engage already our young employees into the topic. In addition to this, we have a self-service portal where our employees can see what they already paid into BASF Pensionskasse and do a projection of what they will get when they go into retirement. In 2018, a law came into force which aimed to increase the coverage of occupational pensions in Germany. Amongst other things, it had the content, or two main contents. The first one was the first DC occupational pension scheme came into place, which is the so-called social partner model, and it had an improved framework for subsidizing employers who contributed to the pension plans of their low-income employees. At the moment, a reform bill is underway with which we aimed to strengthen the occupational pension system further with clarifications and improvements. However, due to the governmental breakup of the governing coalition, we have the situation that it is unsecure if the law comes into force at the moment during this legislative period. We wish for the new government that it takes up the law as soon as possible, as we want these improvements for the occupational pension system in place. Coming to the role of the European Union. The EU should definitely help member states to close pension gaps on national level. And we have a wide consensus over the member states that we need more funded pensions. However, the European Union should be a pulse generator, not a legislator in this process. It should foster discussions between the member states on pension policies, discussions and exchange, so to say, and it should formulate common goals, like, for example, Pillar 15 in the European Pillars of Social Rights. And we do see the need to put the funded pensions into the center of discussions, but leave the implementation on national level. We have two examples for this. The one is the national tracking system, DigiRü, which is how it is called in Germany. This is a good example of how a common goal was created, but the implementation is left on national level. A bad example from our point of view is the European pension product PEP. It has no tangible results, and I think at the moment only one is on the market. We have a strong occupational pension system where employers and employees associations take initiatives. There's a long tradition in Germany for this, and we need a stable environment for it. So create ideas on a European level, but leave the implementation to the national level, as the policies, the pension policies, are directly linked to tax, labor, and social law, which remain in the responsibility of the member states. We wish for an adequate regulatory framework for IOPS on the level of the European Union. Why is that? We do not have a common pension landscape. We do not have a common pension culture. Both is heterogeneous. We do have 3 pillars in all of the countries and all of the member states. However, size and role differ from country to country. Pension law is focused on national level, And it is directly linked to tax, labor, and social law, which also remain on national level. So what we do need is a minimum harmonization on the level of the European Union. This needs to be reflected in the IOP 2 directive. In addition to this, IOPs need minimum harmonization and not being included undifferentiated in the financial market regulation. The latest regulations like SFDR or DORA included IOPs undifferentiated into the system, which led to a higher workload, higher costs, and it had no tangible results. And worst, it could lead to lower pensions as well. So what we wish for is a minimum harmonization on the level of the European Union and an adequate regulatory framework. Pension funds like the BASF Pensionskasse exist in order to provide members and beneficiaries with a reliable retirement income. The deepening of the capital market union can and should contribute to this, and it should not work against it. Bye from Ludwigshafen.
BASF, we create chemistry. Today, we'll explore the structure of our pension system, the importance of the second pillar, and the challenges and solutions for a sustainable future. First, who are we? PensioPlus is the umbrella organization for Belgian pension funds, focusing on the second pillar. These funds manage pension plans for various sectors and companies, ensuring that all profits benefit the members. Belgium's pension system is built on 3 pillars. The first pillar, statutory pension. The second pillar, occupational pensions linked to professional careers. And the third pillar, individual savings. The second pillar is essential because the statutory pension alone isn't enough for a decent standard of living. Supplementary pensions help bridge the gap between the last salary and the statutory pension. Despite efforts to democratize the second pillar, many Belgian employees lack sufficient occupational pensions. PensioPlus calls for expanding and deepening the second pillar, aiming for a minimum contribution of 3%. This requires collaboration with national politicians and social partners. To boost confidence in occupational pensions, we need a stable legal framework and transparency. Members should understand their savings and expected pensions. Digital tools like pension tracking systems are crucial for providing this information. Maintaining current tax rules is also vital for trust. Today, a significant portion of Belgian employees lack sufficient occupational pensions. The active population is shrinking, making the statutory system unsustainable. We need an inclusive approach, combining a solid statutory pension with an expanded second pillar. Belgian pension funds manage the pensions of 2.4 million people, playing a crucial social role. They are non-profit institutions focused on executing the pension schemes as agreed by social partners and on providing retirement benefits and risk sharing. As long-term investors, they contribute to sustainable investments in the real economy. Over the last 40 years, Belgian pension funds have realized an annualized real return of more than 4%, demonstrating their ability to protect the future purchasing power of members and beneficiaries. Strengthening the second pillar is essential for a better future. The sector faces many challenges, including the impact of European regulations. Belgian pension funds manage about 40 billion euros and play a significant role in sustainable investments. However, recent EU regulations, such as SFDR and DORA, do not fully align with the unique nature of pension funds. These regulations treat pension funds as purely financial service providers, which threatens their survival. Since 2016, 25% of the Belgian pension funds ceased operations due to increased regulatory burden, resulting in cost increases, causing inefficiencies for these small not-for-profit organizations. PensioPlus advocates for proportional regulations that recognize the social purpose of pension funds and their role in the triangular relationship between employees, employers, and the pension fund. It is crucial to maintain the IROP II directive's principle-based approach and ensure that new regulations do not impose excessive costs that reduce pension benefits. Therefore, we have three key recommendations. First, proportionality and respect of the subsidiary principle in IROP II, ensuring that regulations are tailored to the specific nature and size of pension funds, avoiding a one-size-fits-all approach. Secondly, proportionality and recognizing IROP's specific characteristics in horizontal legislation, acknowledging the unique characteristics of pension funds in broader legislative frameworks. Note that many IROPs are not selling products, are not for-profit organizations, and are managed in a paritarian way. And thirdly, cutting reporting burden, as mentioned in the Draghi report and aligning with the European Commissioner's pledge of reducing the reporting burden by 25%. PensioPlus calls on all stakeholders to work together for a sustainable pension by broadening access to occupational pensions, deepening their impact through a minimum funding of 3%, and increasing confidence by creating a stable tax environment, enhancing transparency and advocating for the European regulations that recognize the social role of IROPs. We can ensure a better and more secure retirement for everyone. Let's build a stronger future together.
Hello and greetings from the Netherlands. My name is Frederik Lips. I'm a board member of a Dutch pension fund and project manager of the Pension Lab Academy. In this video, I will cover two challenges: the age diversity on pension fund boards and the gender pension gap. Despite being active in pensions for more than 7 years, I'm still the youngest person in most meetings. One of the major issues the European pension sector is facing is fair representation of young people. Young people have a different interest when it comes to investment risks pension funds take. And what about the dilemma of paying out higher pensions now and keeping healthy buffers for later? These interests should be represented in pension fund boards. Too often, young people are seen as either uninvolved or unqualified for board roles. With the Pension Lab Academy, we are proving otherwise. Every year, we offer a training program to a group of young people under the age of 35. The demand is huge, with over 100 applicants annually. We've now educated 38 young professionals to be board ready. A third have already secured board or similar positions, including myself. Pension stakeholders should actively recruit and train young talent, planning for future vacancies now. Age diversity matters, and perhaps the IO directive could even encourage boards to prioritize it. The second challenge I would like to address is the gender pension gap. In the Netherlands, the women's retirement income is a staggering 40% lower than men's due to work and care choices. Often, when someone reduces hours or leaves paid work for caregiving, they lose pension contributions. And these roles mostly fall on women. Why should they face a lower pension when taking on essential care tasks? Social partners and policymakers need to address this through pension care credits to close the gender pension gap. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Aging society is one of the challenges which we are facing in Lithuania, and I believe in other European countries. So first of all, yes, due to longer life expectancy, we have more and more retirees who needs to get pensions from the so-called first pension pillar or pay-as-you-go system. At the same time, we have less people who working, or these who are at age of working population. And it's again related with the decline birth rates. So for example, in Lithuania, during 20 years, the birth rate have decreased by half. And it was calculated that due to these type of the changes, we would need around 700,000 new employees in our working market, which in practice means that we need to open our borders and to have employees coming from abroad. So to population, which is around 3 million in Lithuania, these type of the numbers are really huge. So if to think what to do, so one of the solutions is, to accumulate more, to have the funds which would be available during retirement from other sources than just state pension or first pension pillar. So accumulation in second pension pillar, to accumulate more amounts, to include more people, that the employers put their contributions. So this is one of the solutions which could increase income in the retirement, and they would be diversified from few sources. Yeah. Adequacy and engagement. So in order to have sufficient retirement in your life, it's important to accumulate the assets or to have the income in the retirement, which would contribute to around 70–80% from the previous person's salary. So in order to achieve it, you need to save constantly during your working period. And usually we talk about the amounts which are not so small. In Western countries, we see that the amounts which are accumulated for retirement, it's about 10% and more from your salary every month during working period in order to have higher pension during the retirement. In Lithuania, so far, our premiums, our contributions are not so high. What we are doing, we are contributing 3% from gross person salary, as well as it is added by 1.5% matching contribution from the state budget from average country salary. So again, to have sufficient pensions, to have adequate pensions, I think the premium levels should be increased. They should become higher, and probably there should appear as well additional contributors, that it's not only employee, it's not only state, but as well the employers would add their part to the future pension of employees. Stability and long-term view. Pension systems is created like this, that it creates value during long period of time. So for example, a person is accumulating or paying taxes during all his working period. So we are talking about some 30–40 years. And then reaching the retirement, person spends around 20 years again to enjoy this period of life and to spend money which we accumulated for the retirement. So when we talk about pension systems, it's really important that decision makers, that politicians would have long-term view, would have long-term strategy, how pension system should look like, what kind of the components it should have. And stability is really matters here. If we talk about Lithuanian experience, our second pension pillar is still quite young. We have it only for 20 years. But when I look at how many times it was changed, I would say it's a little bit too much and a little bit too frequent changes are done. So what kind of the solutions we should look at? I think it's about the consensus, about the long-term discussions, about long-term views, about listening to all the stakeholders who is involved into the system in order to create the best outcome for the citizens of Lithuania.
For the European Union, the promotion and the stimulation of long-term private savings for retirement, it's a critical factor to promote better pensions for European citizens. Addressing the challenges of a growing aging society and to channel savings into the economy through effective and sustainable investments. To develop the Savings and Investment Markets Union, whose European Commissioner is the Portuguese Maria Luísa Albuquerque, that will have the responsibility to implement the recommendations of Draghi and Letter reports, making Europe simpler and faster. For the European Retirement Week, my contribution is focused in 3 areas: PEP, auto-enrollment, and accumulation. PEP is an important pan-European product with 2 main goals: the contributions for the patients and the improvement of the common labor market union. With basic PEP, which is simple and transparent, providing dynamic protection of capital with low cost, flexibility, and cross-border. After a long preparation process, PEP became a reality since March 22. But until now, there is only a single operator in the market, which is an issue to be solved. It is already assumed by market operators and EIOPA that, besides some idiosyncratic local reasons, the main constraints avoiding PEP to fly are, among others, being exclusively for the 3rd pillar, low value of the cost cap, the existing of mandatory advice, and the obligation to manage more than one compartment. Existing such a huge consensus, waiting for 2027 to make the required change in PEP regulation is a waste of time. So, the European Commission should consider the anticipation of that process, at least for the beginning of 2025. Auto-enrollment is a key factor to accelerate the growth in occupational pensions, as it is proved by the success in the UK market as well as in other countries. The 2021 Common Markets Union report proposed to make a deep dive study on auto-enrollment, and in 2023, London Economics published the report with the best practice and the performance of auto-enrollment mechanisms for pension funds, stressing the importance of auto-enrollment. Now, we should move from the study phase to implementation phase with recommendations and incentives for European countries to adopt and incentivize auto-enrollment of occupational pensions. Accumulation solutions. With indisputable steady increase in life expectancy, retirement is lasting more than 20 years. It is of relevant importance to define the rules how to convert huge pots of saving accumulated during working life in a steady source of income at retirement. Receiving all in a lump sum, not fulfilling the objective to cover the huge gap in replacement rates is not advisable. But the alternative, being mandatory to buy a long life annuity that, despite the perfect mitigation of longevity risk, has normally some negative factors like low levels of annuity due to a long duration guarantee, not providing adjustments to inflation, not considering health impairments and transmission of a legacy. In alternative or in complement, there are solutions with more market exposure and flexibility that, within a predefined framework of rules, will allow the improvement of pensions and the adjustment to individual circumstances. Being old does not mean being risk averse, and the long duration of retirement phase clearly advised to bear additional market risks to improve the level of pensions. Of course, it's not advisable to define a single set of rules for the entire EU market, but a study with the spread of good practice and recommendations is desirable and might represent a major step for the improvement in quality of pensions in Europe.
So I hope you enjoyed the videos, and these videos are available on Pensions Europe's website as well as on our YouTube channel and via LinkedIn, and I hope in many other places as well. So we heard of many common challenges across Europe, and and in member states, and also of the solutions and how to deal with these challenges at the member state level as well as at the EU level. Some are really fundamental issues that stem from the demographic aging of the population of Europe, and then some are more topical issues dealing with the regulatory developments, which are also very important in Europe. So now it is time to turn to our panel discussion. We will cover many of these main themes and issues, but not all of them. It's my pleasure to welcome as speakers Carolina Fernandez, who is a Deputy Director on Regulation and Public Policy at Inverco in Madrid. Welcome, Carolina. And then Stéphanie Payet from Paris, a private pensions analyst at the OECD. OECD does and has done for a long time very important work in pensions, and especially private pensions, both occupational and personal pensions. Then we have Beate Petri, who was also already featured in one of the videos, and she's head of pensions and other benefits at BASF, and will be the future chairwoman of the German association ABA, which has pension funds as members. And then we have Matthijs Verstegen, who is the head of Brussels office of the Dutch Pension Fund Association Pensioenfederatie. And then we have Yves Stevens, and Yves is a professor at the University of Leuven and is a well-known and admired expert in pensions around the world. So I'm happy to welcome all of you. And if somebody joined just now, I'm Matti Leppälä. I'm the Secretary General of Pensions Europe, based here in Brussels, and I will moderate this discussion. And we have many topics to discuss, but starting with the role of funded, or as OECD often calls them, asset-backed occupational pensions. They are, of course, really play an important role in different ways in different countries in financial security, ensuring financial security during retirement. But their effectiveness, of course, really varies across Europe. So I think the key question we can start with is that how can funded or asset-backed occupational pensions or workplace pensions, that terminology differs, how can they better address pension adequacy challenges? And if I may turn to you, Stéphanie, first for your initial comments.
Thank you very much, Matti, and good afternoon, everybody. So maybe if I can split the question into two sub-answers. First, why do we need funded or asset-backed pension in the first place? And second, how can we make sure that they are serving the best interest of the plan members? And so for the first answer, we have heard a lot during the videos about the challenges related to demographics. But this is not the only reason why we need a combination of pay-as-you-go and asset-backed pension systems. Because actually the pension systems, they have to address different objectives, and they also have to protect people from different types of risks. And depending on the type of pension system, pay-as-you-go or asset-backed, there will be different strengths and weaknesses as regard the different objectives and the different risks that people are facing. So in terms of objectives, for example, adequacy is one obvious objective, but there is also poverty relief, consumption smoothing, redistribution is sometimes a key objective of pension systems. And in terms of risks, well, there is the demographic risk, obviously, that pay-as-you-go pension systems are facing, but the people saving for retirement are also facing risk related to labor market, macroeconomic situations like inflation or discount rates, financial market risk. When you invest your savings in the capital markets, you have fluctuating returns, and also longevity risk. And this is because we have this range of objectives and range of risks that we need to protect people against, that it's better resilience of pension system is to have a combination of pay-as-you-go and asset-backed. And then to the second part of the answer, what can we do to make sure that they are that the asset-backed, occupational or personal pensions function well? But there is a big role for policymakers to ensure that they regulate those systems well, they supervise those systems well, and they design those systems well. And at the OECD, we have two legal instruments that can provide some assistance for policymakers to better regulate, supervise, and design asset-backed pensions. We have the OECD Core Principles of Private Pension Regulation, which includes 10 principles covering occupational and personal pensions to encourage more efficient regulation, supervision, but also governance and management, investment management of the assets. And we have the OECD recommendation for the good design of defined contribution pension plans. So that second recommendation is focused on defined contribution pensions, whether occupational or personal. But it provides some principles to ensure that the design of these defined contribution pension plans promotes inclusivity, adequacy, efficiency. So costs and fees is also an important aspect here. And also in a way that can help the people to mitigate the risks that they are facing when they save for retirement. And maybe if I can finish with a few numbers in terms of what we see in the EU, is that compared to other OECD countries, usually the size of the asset-backed pension system is relatively small, but there are three champions, I would say, in the EU, which are the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden, which are in the top 10 of the OECD countries in terms of assets under management in funded pensions. So I'll leave it here for the moment.
Thank you, Stephanie. If I may turn to you, Yves, on the same issue, you have followed the European developments in all types of pensions, both social security, occupational, as well as personal pensions, but also you have followed the developments in other parts of the world, in the US, in Australia. So what would you say about the role of funded pensions, asset-backed pensions, and how they have developed, and how important are they in providing adequate pensions?
Thank you, Matti. Well, I don't think my answer will be very different from what Stephanie says, but I think I have a rather a kind of other approach to it. That is, I think Stephanie is right that the mix of funded and pay-as-you-go, that has more or less been proven now. I think that such a mixture is what we need in quasi all countries. And then, of course, you have the two tools of the OECD that are very welcome and that are really good ideas on how to proceed on that level. And I also think that we're living now in a different stage, Matti, than we were 30 years ago or 40 years ago. We all remember more or less what the World Bank said in 1994 with the three-pillar model. And at that time, there were some countries that really reacted or overreacted by saying that there was this kind of opposition between pay-as-you-go and funded. And fortunately, I think those times are gone. I don't see anyone saying that's not true. So you need actually both. And I think that's the main message that Stephanie wants to give, and I fully agree there. However, when you see that having this shift and having more funded schemes, how does this work? And I see there are, let's say, problems at two levels. The first one is actually when you want to have more, again, when you want to have more funded schemes, then there are three elements that come into play at a certain moment. The first one is the cultural background. We see that in some countries, it's really difficult to have funded schemes. I'm happy to see Carolina again, but I'm always happy to see Carolina, but we know that for Spain and Portugal, looking at funded schemes, it has to do with a different way of looking at pensions, and it also has to do with the role of the government. How do the governments react to social security? And above all, when we look at Eastern European countries, it has to do with trust. come on, guys, if we look what happened in a lot of Eastern European countries with funded schemes, this has led to some hiccups in people trusting the systems. So I think these three parameters, the cultural background, trusting the system, and the role of the government, need to be taken into account. And I'm happy to see that what the OECD does and did takes that actually into account. And now I come to my second part of how to deal with this thing is actually, when we look at our welfare states, it is very clear, at least from my point of view, that, guys, we're not really good at revolutions. When we talk about pensions, we are better at evolutions. That means that we have to go step by step. The welfare states and the pension systems do not allow real revolutions. It doesn't work. We always have evolutions. And hence, Matti, you know, this is a very old thing I've always said, is that it's normal that countries have more parametric reforms than structural reforms. Because if you do not have this trust, and if you do not allow the role of the government to be played, and if you do not respect the cultural background, your shift to funded schemes will not work, because people don't like revolutions. They only like evolutions. So yes, I think we should go for a mixture, but always bear in mind that the European welfare states are a tricky business there.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Steve. I'm sure many will have, I mean, everybody has views on these topics, and maybe we can come back to the other speakers on the same issue, this really fundamental issue of having funded pensions to begin with. But maybe the next question can be the question of coverage and how to increase the coverage. And we have countries where the coverage is really high, like in the Netherlands, based on collective agreements that can be declared generally binding. So very good coverage. But also in Germany, there's good coverage in many cases, not for everybody, but a very strong role for occupational pensions, and very long tradition in providing them. And I think many people around Europe are looking at the best examples and the long traditions. So not something that has been recently put in place, but something that has been in place for a longer period of time. And I think both Germany and the Netherlands are very good examples in this, as for people to see what works and what doesn't, and why is it. So can I turn first to Matthijs and Beate on this issue, how important it is to have good coverage, and how to increase that, and how to ensure that the contribution levels are also adequate, so that they actually do provide a good pension. So, I mean, Yves said that revolutions and bigger changes are difficult, and that is a certainty. But Matthijs, in the Netherlands, there's a big change happening now and in the next years to come. So what would you say about this issue of increasing coverage and providing adequate contribution levels?
Thank you, Matti. Yeah, you're right. We're in the middle of a transition from DB to DC, and it's one that is in the making already for 10 to 15 years, and we're going to take 5 more years to implement it. But I'd say that's okay if you do it right. You can take some time. And it takes time because we have a social partner model that perhaps is slow to change, but therefore also provides a lot of stability. So I think if you look at the European champions that were mentioned by Stephanie, you see in all those 3 countries very strong involvement of the social partners, of unions and employers, and that has certain very strong benefits. It provides scale, which really lowers costs. I mean, you know, there's this discussion on the 1% fee cap for PEPs. Dutch IORPs operate well below that, even though they're allocated towards private equity, infrastructure, and other relatively expensive asset classes. It provides stability. So we have our occupational pension system already for many decades, and we put it sort of a bit further away from government, so that it's not as easy for the government to seize assets or to tweak regulation just ahead of elections. So we really do believe in that model, but at the same time, it is about the interplay between government policy and the social partner model, because as you mentioned in the Netherlands, the social bargaining agreements which set up the pension funds are declared mandatory for the entire sector under certain conditions. So if you're active as a company within a certain sector, even though you might not be unionized, you will still need to be part of the pension fund. This is how we get to the 90% coverage of employees that we have in the Netherlands. That's great, but that's not necessarily a solution that you can always just copy paste. So I think what other countries should do, and maybe what we should do, is explain to social partners across Europe that this really is in the benefit of participants and employees, and that a 3-pillar system with a strong second pillar can still have a strong redistributive effect. In the Netherlands, that is in the first pillar, strongly the case. So if you care about redistribution, the second pillar can still be very much a part of that full solution. And secondly, that the government can get involved. I think auto-enrollment is also a model where you involve the employer, even if there's not a social bargaining agreement per se. But I think even in that model, it helps that the employer is involved to speak to employees about their pension, to communicate, to be involved in selecting investment options. You have it. So yeah, we should be champions for the benefits of the collective model, but also encourage other European governments to get involved.
Yeah, thanks, Matthijs. I mean, we heard in the videos from our friends in Vilnius in Lithuania that their contribution levels in their auto-enrollment occupational pensions were, as they see, inadequate. 3% from the employees and 1.5% from the state. No employer contribution in Lithuania as of now. In the Netherlands, the contribution levels are totally different. So I think somewhere around 25%. So how do you? I mean, I'm sure many are thinking that, like, how is it possible to have such high contribution levels? What's the trick in the Netherlands?
Well, some people would say be thrifty Protestants that are very much engaged in long-term planning. I mean, to Eve's credit, I think culture does matter there, but I think what also matters is having policy-making processes that really look at the longer run. I mean, I know, Matti, your home country, Finland, you have a funded first pillar, and you have procedures in place to recalculate the liabilities immediately once there's even a small change in the birth rates. So policymakers should look at these things and look further than just the next election, and then you realize it's not just cultural; it's also rational to be saving more than just 2 or 3%.
Thanks, Beate. You said in your video that your pension fund, BASF Pensionskassen, has been in operation since 1888.
Correct.
Which is quite a long time, even in the European pension fund history perspective. I'm sure there are some older ones, but that is remarkable. And of course, my understanding is that the German take is different. You have voluntary system, but good companies, many companies provide this as part of the remuneration, part of the pay package to their employees, and are very committed to this. But then there are many options for the companies to choose. So how would you say that, well, what would you say about this having good coverage in occupational pensions, and how does the German system meet that challenge?
Yeah, good afternoon from Germany. Yeah, we in Germany, we do have around 55% coverage in occupational pensions. So, and the government is trying to increase it, as we see the second pillar, or the government also sees the second pillar as needed for having or for maintaining a good financial background, good financial situation when going over into retirement. So in the chemical industry where BASF is working, we have a long tradition, and this in having occupational pension systems. And this is true for other industries or other companies as well. But in order to increase the coverage of occupational pensions further, I think the situation and the needs of all types of employees have to be taken into account. In Germany, we see the biggest coverage gaps are in small and medium-sized enterprises, and they are among below average earners. So, in my view, it would be the best way to assure adequate contributions to the pension plans of low-income employees, which is a collective effort involving the state, the employer, and social partners. So with the law, which I also mentioned in the video, that was put in place in 2018, we have introduced a subsidy for employers that contribute to the occupational pension plans of their low-income employees. And this was really a good improvement, or like you said, a revolution, because over 80,000 employers take part, many of them that are small and medium-sized, exactly the target group we needed in that. And they pay contributions to the pension plans of over 1 million low-income employees. And and the low-income employees, these are the ones they needed in their retirement phase. They really do need it in the retirement phase, as their statutory pension will be low as well. So, and this subsidy Germany offers is considered a great success in the law, which was underway, which is stopped at the moment. We have had improvements in this low-income field, so we are really waiting for the law to come. But I think it's not going to come before elections in February. But when I look at the situation from a company who has an occupational pension scheme in place, there are many things we can do, but and it really is a factor that can that decides, or that future employees take into account when deciding for a new employer an attractive occupational pension plan in place. So what are we doing? We look for attractive systems we offer, but on the other hand, for the employees we already have, in order to keep them at the company, we try to explain the complex topics in easy words. So this is one thing, and we show them what they will have during their retirement phase with a projection they can do in our portal, in our self-service portal. So I think these are key factors in order to keep employees in the system and to get new ones into it. And to be quite honest, the regulatory framework is one that is in my heart, as it needs to be attractive, that we can offer pension plans that we can offer pension plans that are attractive, because too bureaucratic hurdles, too high pressure on the system being put into the financial regulations without looking at differences of IOPs or pension funds. This is one thing that lowers pensions and that lowers attractiveness on the as a consequence.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Beate. I mean, Carolina, could I ask you as well about the role of occupational pensions and then increasing coverage of funded pensions in Spain, because that has not been an easy journey, if I've understood correctly. Spain has had very good high-level social security pensions, but of course, the challenges are also in Spain. What would you say?
Well, hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Mati. Well, let me set the scene for starters. In Spain, Spain is the second country with the highest current public replacement rate. It has actually 80%, 80.4% of replacement rate, which is totally fully absorbed by the public systems. That means that usually people do not save, or funded pension funds are not really in the Spanish mindset, which is something that already it's been mentioned, like there is a need for a cultural and mindset change. So solutions are needed to ensure not only sustainability for the first pillar, which is mainly what our latest reform has tackled, but to promote the second and third pillar. And why am I saying that? Because even though our legislative changes have improved some tax incentives around the second pillar, they have done it while actually in detriment of the third pillar. And that is something that's going against. I mean, in Spain, we have like just 1 out of 5 companies, because we are an economy which is 99.8% small and medium-sized enterprises. So one out of 100 companies offer pension plans for their employees. That means leaving a potentially significant proportion of the population unprotected and with no access to competitive retirement savings, leaving the third pillar, which has been actually increasing for like 10 years in a row, these 3 last years since the reform, losing contributions. I don't know if this actually answers your question, but it's been challenging. Funding pensions still are something that we have to manage, and there is a cultural change that we need to tackle by raising awareness due to this heavily replacement rate that our public systems actually cover.
Yes, and do you remember by heart how big a contribution is that then for the taxpayers to support this very high level first pillar social security pension that indeed has provided excellent, very high benefits for many people, but how expensive is it?
Well, you see, we do it through contributions through our social system. I mean, not only the employees pay it, but also the employers. So that is contributed through the social system, but also now there's been a reform while some has actually redirected from the tax income. But I do not know by heart how much has actually been redirected from the taxed part.
Yeah, thanks. I see that both Stephanie and Eve have information about these expenses. So maybe to Eve first and then Stephanie.
No, please, Stephanie was first. Ladies first. Beauty before age.
Okay, Stephanie, I'm sure you know the situation.
So it was not actually to react to the cost of public pension, but more on ways to increase coverage. So if Eve is a direct reaction to Spain, please go ahead.
Okay, we're ping-ponging. No, I want to actually to react to the question of Matti on how expensive is it. Well, guys, let's be honest. We just heard Matthijs explaining that Dutch pension system, and we all say the Dutch pension system is really a good system. And it's also in the Mercer and so on that the Dutch is the good system. And we act as if these systems are good systems because of their system. But of course, when you put 25% of how much was it, Matthijs? If you put that much money into any system, it ends up by being a good system, of course. So it's all about the money and it's all about the expenses. So, and there, of course, it means what risks do you want to be bared by whom at what level? And of course, the Dutch is a very good system, and the Spanish is also a good system. There aren't any bad systems in the world. When I'm abroad, some politicians that are not very knowledgeable on pensions, they always ask me, so tell me, what is the best pension system? There is not a best pension system. It does not exist. It all depends where you want to put your money in and how structural you want to adapt the system. That was just a reaction to Matti's question on how expensive it is. But I fully agree with Mattis. That's it's how he put it.
Very good. Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. Well, just to this question of how to increase coverage in asset-backed or occupational pension systems, I think one of the key trends that we have seen in the past 15 years or so is the introduction of automatic enrollment. But somehow, if you want to have, it's like Yves was saying, if you want to have good pensions, you need to contribute. If you want to have good coverage, you also need to have some sort of compulsion somewhere. So either through the social partners and the Netherlands, Denmark, Finland is in this way, you have a mandate or you have collective agreements that can become mandatory for the whole sector, and this is how you reach good coverage. Or most countries who have implemented automatic enrollment, the mandate is actually on employers to do it. So all employers have to implement it, have to select a pension scheme. And then there is some element of voluntary participation from the employees. But in most countries, it was successful enough that inertia is so large, is so big that people just do nothing. And by doing nothing, they remain a member of the pension scheme. So same way as you need to contribute a lot, you need some kind of mandate to reach high coverage.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, and the employers usually play a very important role, but not always, like in Lithuania, where the employers don't play a role, and it's the Social Security institution that then sees who is going to be auto-enrolled, and they do it then. But then it's because of the national reality, what is possible and what's doable, and they have a 75% coverage rate now in Lithuania as a consequence. One of the big issues that is being debated and will be debated, and rightly so, is the big pension gender gap. We had our Dutch friend in the videos telling that even in the Netherlands, with very good occupational pensions, the gender pension gap is 40%. So women's pensions are 40% less than men's pensions, and sometimes then looking at the smallest pension gaps, like in some of the Baltic states, you have a very small gender pension gap, but then you have the highest risk of poverty. So everybody is poor, but they're equally poor. It is a complicated issue, but it's a real issue and it's a real problem. I know Yves and Stephanie, you have been both looking at this, but maybe starting with Yves first, and then with Stephanie on the different issues that are relevant here and the different drivers that are behind the reality that we have a very big gender pension gap, twice as big as the gender pay gap. So this is something that needs to be addressed. Over to you, Yves.
Yeah. I just want to say on the pension gender gap, because I know Stephanie has worked a lot on it and has written quite a lot of good stuff on it, so I'll leave that to her. But in my opinion, I think the most important and the most the most important element in this discussion is that finally this is on the agenda. Finally, this is really on the political agenda. We've been talking about the pension gender gap for the last 10 years, but now we see that more and more governments are taking it up, are looking at it. And I think when we look at the pension adequacy report, the last one of a few months ago, now we see that there is a full chapter on pension gender gap. And I think that's really a game changer. I think any modern welfare state cannot ignore that the risk of women living in poverty after old age it can no longer be denied. So it is so important that this has come onto the political agenda. And my friends, this is not a problem of only pay-as-you-go systems. This is not only a problem of pay. This is not only a problem of funded. This is a societal problem. And hence we should all start monitoring these effects, because we cannot leave out half of our population in living in old age. So my main message is here that I'm happy that finally this has really been taken on after 20 years of being neglected. And I'll give the floor to Stephanie for the more exact elements. So just one more thing, it's with the Belgian presidency, we wrote a report on the pension gender gap that you can find on the website of the Belgian presidency, and on all the effects on the different member states.
Indeed.
Stephanie, over to you.
Yeah, before I'm handing over to Stephanie, just wanted to say, Yves, that women are more than half of the population, and then they live longer. And especially the older women will have the biggest problems with the old age poverty. So it is really an increasing and a big problem. But Stephanie, you and the OECD have been working on this quite a bit, and I would say with the very thorough analysis of the different drivers. There are clear drivers like the labor market structures and women being more responsible in reality for care duties, both children and elderly, but there are many other drivers in here, and also the system design and how occupational pensions are organized. They can also have an impact. So what can you share of what you have found in your work that is relevant in the gender pension gap?
Thanks, Matti. Well, actually, you summarized it already. But if we try to categorize the different drivers, so the first big elephant in the room is the labor market drivers. So women participate less in the labor market. When they do participate, they have more career breaks. They do more part-time work. And even when they have everything the same way as men, somehow they get paid less for the same type of job. So obviously, all those drivers flow into the pay-as-you-go system, the contributions you pay and the entitlements you build, but also in the asset-backed pension system. And then there are some factors that are more directly related to asset-backed pension system. So although if we look at the numbers today, the main source of the gender pension gap is coming from the public pension system, because in most European countries today, the older people, most of their income source in retirement is coming from the public pension system. But we also know that there are a lot of countries that are increasing the role of asset-backed pension system. So in the future, it's also important that the asset-backed pension system doesn't exacerbate the gender pension gap in a way, and is more like gender neutral in its design. So in terms of some factors that are really quite interesting and important to take into account, there are some behavioral and cultural factors that affect the way people save for retirement. So, for example, there are many studies showing that women are more risk averse than men, which means that in a defined contribution setting, if people have to select their investment strategy, the women would tend to select a more conservative investment strategy, which over the long term means that they will earn lower returns and therefore have a lower income in retirement. Another related factor is the lower levels of financial literacy, and that women, we observe that women have lower levels of financial literacy than men in basically all the countries, which also means that they will be less comfortable with the asset-backed pension system, because it requires to make a lot of financial decisions that they may not be comfortable making. In terms of savings attitudes, there are also differences. For example, there are studies showing that women tend to prioritize current spending, either for themselves or for their family members, rather than saving for tomorrow. So this will have an impact on whether or not they want to join an occupational or personal pension plan. And there are also gender stereotypes that have an impact. For example, the young girls, they tend to be less into studies related to math and science and finance, and which also help to get an understanding of how asset-backed pension systems work. And also because women have higher levels of risk aversion than men, the financial advisors sometimes, because they know that, they tend to go even further and advise on even more conservative investment strategies than women would have selected by themselves. So this is a kind of gender stereotypes as well. And as you were saying, there is another group of factors in the asset-backed pension system that is related to the design itself of the system. So, for example, in many occupational pension systems in different countries, in order to be eligible to join the pension plan, you may need to fulfill some minimum number of working hours or some minimum income level in order to be able to join. And that means that a lot of women, because they work part-time or they earn lower earnings, they will not be able to join the occupational pension plan, even though there is one that is offered by the employer. Another aspect related to design is, well, we know that women have to take maternity leave, but there are some countries that do compensate for that period of maternity leave by continuing to pay the contributions. The employer continues paying the contribution during the period of maternity leave, but in some countries it's not mandatory, so employers just don't do it, which will translate into a gap at the end of the day. There are also some important aspects related to divorce. And unfortunately, there are couples that build their own retirement journey together, and at some point there is a breakup, and the rights that have been accumulated, thinking of we will both be able to enjoy it once we retire, it disappears for half of the former couple. And while some countries do automatize the splits of pension rights or pension entitlements or pension assets between the former members of a couple, is not always the case, and usually women tend to forget about those things during divorce settlements and just give up on a lot of rights. And two last aspects of design that are also quite important are related to the payout phase. We know that women are living longer, and so it's important that the pension schemes offer some survivor options. So that the surviving spouse, usually the woman, can still get some pension income when the man passes away. And related to that is also the indexation of pension benefits, which, given the longer life expectancy, it matters more for women than for men. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Matthijs, you wanted to comment as well?
Well, I think I made the mistake of raising my hand halfway while Stephanie was speaking, forgetting that as one of the foremost pension experts, she was going to say everything in the end that that was relevant. But I think the Dutch experience is sort of interesting because a lot of the elements that you mentioned in design features of occupational pensions are not at play in the Netherlands. So there's no minimum amount of hours. Basically, everybody gets an occupational pension, and still there is, this huge. I think even one of the biggest pension gender gaps. So it's really primarily, for the largest part, the labor market. Because quite some collective bargaining agreements actually do provide some care credits for maternity cover. So yeah, what to do? It's not easy because the occupational pension system is one where you have to contribute in order to make use of it. And perhaps the low-hanging fruit is those last two elements, Stephanie, that you mentioned. I mean, divorce, automatic separation of assets in the case of divorce really can be a good way to protect women of getting into poverty later in life, and survivor pensions as well. So I think those are two design features that either governments or social partners, well, the divorce bit is governments, of course, but should take on board.
Mhm. Eve.
Yeah, I think given the scope of the problem, I think we should all install this kind of mechanism. Whether you're an employer, a trade union, a government, a pension fund, a pension institution, or whatever, but I think we should all develop this kind of tool by having an impact assessment of everything we do each time. Look, does this have an effect, yes or no, to the gender pension gap? So if there is a change in your plan, in your scheme, and you're a trade union, you're an employer, you're a pension fund, you're an insurer, I don't know what, but I think there should always be this reflex. Does this hurt women more or less in the long term? And so if having this kind of impact analysis will in the end lead to more awareness of having so many women be living in poverty. So I'm a big fan of this kind of impact analysis tool developed for all in all levels, not only for governments, but for all involved. I was with Matti in the high-level group on the expert of pensions, or how was this thing called again, Matti? I said, well, the high-level group
of experts in pensions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was one of the recommendations we made. And at that time, I don't know how it is today, but some people at the table were not in favor of such an impact assessment tool. And I agreed on that level because we didn't have enough data, we didn't have enough monitoring. But you cannot deny now, when we look at the figures, what is the reality. So I think we should all go ahead with this impact analysis tool. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. Indeed, it's an important topic and not an easy one. I remember years ago when we now talked about this divorce and then what happens if you don't divide the assets. And of course, like in the Nordic countries, that's not really, you have individual rights. So it's a very culturally dependent issue as well. But I remember a Swedish advertisement that I saw, which was, what will you do when the love runs out? And that was directed to women to sell them personal pensions, to have them save a personal pension for themselves, because in the case of love running out, their outlook was not a very good one. So I would like to turn to the role of personal pensions. So who needs them? What's their purpose? How important are they? I mean, this providing for individual savings for women or whoever needs them. That's one aspect. So improving your pension outcome. But then we have, of course, increasingly, even in the best pension fund countries like Denmark and Netherlands and others who have very well-developed pension funds, occupational pensions with good coverage and good benefits. Even in those countries, we have increasing number of people who are outside the scope of these pensions. They're self-employed or platform workers or in gig economy in different ways. And one of the relevant issues is how to provide them with proper adequate pensions when they retire. And one of the solutions could maybe be then different types of personal pensions. So Carolina, what do you think about this issue of personal pensions and who needs them and what can be the role of personal pensions? You already said that in Spain, it's not an easy situation between the personal pension third pillar and the second pillar occupational pensions.
Yes, well, third pillar remains essential here. Going back to what I have mentioned before, due to this new legislation implementation that was trying to boost occupational pension plans, which was essential also because, as we are saying, holistic approach, we are having, we need three pillars. I mean, it's essential and a state pension for us, an occupational pension pillar two, and of course the personal pension for all those different population segments, as the one that you've already mentioned, Matti, that could not be covered neither by by the principally or mainly by occupational pensions. And that is why we understand that personal pension plans and third pillar is still essential for us. And allow me to give you some data. For example, in Spain, third pillar individual pension plans cover for 15.1% of the population. That added to the state contribution pensions. It's something that's been increasing over the last 10 years, up to 46.5%. The average vested rights usually per member are 11,523 euros, which are not a lot, but as I've mentioned before, we have the 80% coverage by the public pension system, which actually leads to this type of not really big vested rights. But if we talk about funded pensions like as a whole, as how the industry manage them, this adds up to 84,993,000 millions that are actually managed through funded pensions. This is something that is actually interesting because what we've seen and what we've heard by many experienced and important experts here is that occupational pension plans actually give better returns. Nonetheless, for given the data that we have, the returns that actually personal pension plans are having are better, not only for this year, but if we go back 10 years. And also there is a steady decline of management fees going from 2011 till 2023. What I am trying to say is that we cannot leave a system, well, a pillar that works to boost the other one. They are complementary. And that is why we need to boost both, because they are tools that need to work together in order to actually have adequacy for the system. Because now it's totally going back to what I've said in the beginning, this 80% rate, given the latest age population, I think, report, it will go down to 44% by 2060, I think, or something like that, 2060. And that is half of what we have now. So it is really important that those two systems work together and that we are able to raise awareness among the population.
Indeed. I mean, Beate, also in Germany, the replacement rates of the expected replacement rates, so the relation of the retirement income to the previous salary is going down in the social security pensions, and then you have good occupational pensions for those who have them, but not everybody has them. But in Germany, already a long time ago, in more than 20 years ago, there was a big policy change to support also third pillar personal pensions, and then different developments in relation to that. But how do you see the situation now, and what do you think could and should be the role of personal pensions in Germany, in addition to quite good first pillar and quite well developed occupational pension?
I think the strength in Germany is that we all have all three pillars. However, there's a clear focus on the first and the second pillar. and the government wants to strengthen them further. So the third pillar is one that is completing the picture. At the moment, we see the need to improve second and third pillar, and we see the going down, or the going down of the level of the pensions from the first pillar. So the situation is quite a difficult one in Germany at the moment. We had laws coming up for all three pillars, but due to the political situation at the moment, we do think that not one of them will come into place. So we need to. This is a moment of where we need to wait what the election in February brings, as we see then taking up new laws in order to improve the situation in all three pillars. So the kind of unstable situation at the moment, and unstable situations is something that we don't like when talking about pensions.
Indeed, thank you. I mean, Stephanie, OECD has been working also on personal pensions as part of the the strong three pillar models. How do you see the role of personal pensions as part of a good pension system design?
Well, I think it depends on the structure of the labor market, and actually we see that that structure of the labor market is changing everywhere, with more self-employment, gig economy workers, and so this shift in the way people work, less through the long-term employment relationship, and more through self-employment, means that the ways we've been trying to reach people to give access to asset-backed pensions for occupational pension plans still works. And obviously we should still continue to strengthen occupational pensions and to bring in more industries into it, and to cover more and more employees. But we also need to think about what to do with the self-employed, because they don't have an employer to do it for them. And so this is clearly an area where the personal pension plans can play a role. So I think one of the speakers, or one of in the videos, I think, mentioned that every member state in the EU has, I think it was you, Beate, that mentioned that every member state has the three pillars. So there are personal pension plans everywhere in Europe. But there are some countries that go a step further, with a dedicated specific personal pension plans for the self-employed to cater to their specific needs. So we have two examples in mind. In France, my country, we have the Loi Madelin, and now we have the PER equivalent, just for self-employed and heads of agricultural business. And in Belgium, they also have like 3 different versions of personal pensions for the self-employed, depending on their situation. And actually, in those 2 countries, this is quite successful. The coverage rate of those schemes among the self-employed is actually either the same level as for employees in Belgium, or even greater than for employees in France. So having dedicated products that respond to the needs of the self-employed in the personal pension space can work. And there are also interesting examples, I think, in Denmark and the Netherlands, where they allow the self-employed to use their business profits, or to use the sales of the proceeds when they sell their business, and to put that amount in a dedicated personal retirement savings plan with some tax incentive attached to it. Because in a way, there are many self-employed that rely on their businesses to provide them with a retirement income. So this is a way to make sure that they earmark part of that money, so the business profits or the sales proceeds of their businesses, really to finance their future retirement.
Indeed, thanks, Stephanie, and I'm sure that there's a lot of innovation needs to take place in enabling platform-based workers, or broader gig economy to save. So how to collect contributions, whether it's through the apps, whether it's the customer who pays directly into something, or and you know, big problems of how to include these types of new forms of work into the social security pensions as well. So there are many things that need to be, you know, many new things need to be innovated as well. But as part of the personal pension debate is of course the pan-European personal pension product PEP, which was mentioned in the videos as well, and especially by our Portuguese friend Valdemar in the end. That is a new thing. It has been an option for 2 years, more than 2 years now, but has not really been a success this far. Only one provider, and that was not was planned for. So really to have a simple, standardized, portable pension product, especially for the mobile workers in Europe. That is something that is going to be discussed and thought about, what to do with PEP and how to improve this, and what should be done with the PEP to make it a success. What do you think, Matthijs?
Well, first off, I think it's a irrelevant question whether the PEP is a success. A lot of European policymakers seem to be very much interested in this question. I think the real question is, will we get more people saving in good products? That should be the question. And if we think of a PEP label that then cannibalizes all national products with broadly the same characteristics, you know, we've not gained much. Perhaps we have gained more portability, but I think that is the element that is not really working well at the moment. I don't know if there is that much demand for products that are cross-border that would, you know, would warrant the investment that you have to do as a provider to set up a new product. So in the end, if we can design a new product that is interesting to people in countries that don't have good products yet, that is a win for Europe, I would say, and that's a win for those people, and we would support that. But in the Netherlands, we already have a third pillar that operates well below the 1% cost cap. And again, you know, the issue is scale, because we have a lot of self-employed. There is enough scale to do that. Another thing that might be helping is the inducement ban. So you know, the mandatory advice in PEP is expensive, and in the Netherlands we banned inducements for advisors. So we have rather mass marketing, which is perhaps cheaper and helps to push down the costs. So it's interesting to see that EIOPA has put some ideas on paper already, and one of them I think we should look very closely and critically at is the idea to allow the PEP onto the second pillar. I mean, I understand the idea that you want to get scale, but then you would get a situation where the PEP would be offered on the second pillar next to national pension products. So, for example, you would have different information requirements, different projections showing, you know, your pension between your national and your European pension product. So I don't know how desirable that is, and I really doubt that social partners would start building up a pension system just because now the PEP is available in the second pillar. I think product features is typically not really the issue holding social partners back. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure what problem there we would be solving. But to conclude, if we manage to get more people saving in the third pillar, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matthijs. I mean, Carolina, you already told us about the fact that in Spain, the third pillar personal pensions have developed and play an important role complementing the the first pillar. So how do you, what is your view on PEP, and how important would that be for the Spanish market or across Europe?
Well, building on what EIOPA, a little bit this staff paper has actually pointed out. I mean, one of the main challenges for the PEP is the heterogeneous tax regime across the EU, which actually makes it difficult to compete against other vehicles. Nonetheless, here in Spain, the legislation gave the PEP the same tax regime as the personal pension plans, and it did not fly anyway. But it is true that what Eve mentioned before, it's totally related. I mean, EU citizens keep 1/3 of their savings in bank deposits. This means that probably it's not really a question of supply side. I mean, there are enough products that are being offered, and the issue is in the demand. Like, how do we do, and Matis also has said, how do we get more investment? How do we get more people to save in these investment products? And that is difficult with this kind of mindset, like 1/3 in saving bank deposits. This this shift towards a more investment-oriented mindset, it's difficult. Other things that has been mentioned, it's also the focus that the PEP has on this 1% fee cap, but now they are giving this value for money orientation. I mean, EIOPA reflects on the PEP and the risk associated with imposing regulatory pricing on financial products, since they have acknowledged this 1% cost cap has hindered, they say, the expansion of this product, and emphasize that the cost focus on the value for money offered by products rather than absolute costs. However, I think the European debate on value for money that now is within this European retail money investment strategy is risky. EIOPA is actually playing an active role and poses significant risk. I mean, they are advocating for the introduction of a pricing model between products, leaving like free competence out of the equation. And I think that is something that we need to reflect also, not only for PEP but for other products. And I think that also it's something that the PEP won't benefit from. The other things that I have already signaled, like I mean, for example, national tax treatment, as I've said, we've already done that, been there, and didn't work. Reducing administrative burden, it does help. Mati has said the mandatory advice does not make it favorable for this type of products. Indeed, we do not have for our personal pension plans these type of obligations, and of course, this is something that won't help asset managers adopt this type of PEP label for the domestic market. Nonetheless, we always support a pension product that could work for portability, and indeed, if it works for other member states, even for Spaniards, in order to save and invest more, we would totally support it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure there are different views and different realities again on this issue. And like we heard from our friend Valdemar in Portugal, he would like to have the framework in place in Portugal and then have a PEP there, and we'll see what happens. The Commission European Commission will deal with the reform of the regulation sooner. It can be already next year or later, so in a few years. So we'll see what the developments are, and it's very much down to the details then, as well as we already covered some of the important issues. But then we have about 10 minutes left for this webinar, and I would like to turn to the as a last question to the EU's role in pension development, I mean, Beate, in your video, it ended nicely by saying that BASF, we create chemistry. So I was thinking that, do we need the right chemistry between EU and the member states in pensions? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this definitely is the case. But let me add one thing that I wanted to bring to the PEP at the just really short. I'm with Mattis. I don't see how a one-size-fits-all approach can lead to a further coverage of occupational pensions or funded pensions in all member states. If we find or if we reach higher coverage, this is good. But I don't see how PEP will do it. And coming to the next question. I think what the EU can give or how they can best support the member states' pension policies, it would be acting like a forum for exchange of experiences and ideas. And if we could have common objectives at EU level and have a coordination of activities within the framework, this would be great. But and the pension tracking system, as I already mentioned in the video, they are a good example of how this idea on a general European Union level has led to very good outcomes in the member states, and that at least in the member states that have decided to implement one. But if we could strengthen the funded pensions or the coverage of funded pensions, it could be by including them into the European Pillar of Social Rights in Principle 15. And what do we need for this? We would need common goals and an exchange on ideas on European Union level, and the implementation, this needs to be followed on national level and has to be left to the member states then. Representing both ABBA and BASF, I believe that when we strengthen the collective occupational pensions, this is the best way to really increase the coverage in funded pensions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm critical of the tendency of certain actors on European Union level to act as a legislator on pensions. We have a heterogeneous landscape in pensions, and we have 27 different pension systems in place, as we already heard this afternoon. But what we need respect for the different pension systems and for the specificities of the different pension systems, as the pillars play different roles. They are different in size and in their effect. So this differs from member state to member state. So IOPS, they do have their own directive, but they have recently been included in EU regulations on the entire financial sector undifferentiated, which means that there was not taken into account what a special situation IOPS have. There were no tangible improvements for the members and beneficiaries of IOPS. On the contrary, it led to high costs, and this could and does have a negative impact on the level of pensions that IOPS are able to pay out. And as another consequence, it might cause employers to turn away or to refrain from offering an occupational pension scheme as the administrative burden gets higher and higher. So when IOPS are included in financial legislation, the European Union has rather been obstructing the further dissemination of occupational pensions. So our wish would be having a look at the specificities of IOPS, of the occupational pension system, in order that they are reflected in the right way in the directives and in the regulation.
Thank you, Beat. And in the videos also our Belgian member made the point that in Belgium 25% of the Belgian pension funds have closed because of the increased requirements So it is not helping the situation necessarily. But Eve, you have followed these developments, EU member states, for a long time. What do you think should be the role of EU in supporting developing both occupational and personal pensions?
I'm afraid I think we lost Eve already.
Okay. Then turning to you, Matthijs. You took the floor, so what do you think?
Yeah, well, no, I fully agree with Beate about what the EU should not do. I mean, imagine you're a company now thinking about developing your own occupational pension fund, and then the first thing that you get is a set of rules that's on cybersecurity that's essentially modeled on globally systemic banks with payment systems that, you know, if they cut out 20 minutes, the economy comes to a halt. You know, so we need a regulatory framework that is fit for purpose. So fully agree there. Maybe on what the EU can do. Maybe I'm a bit more optimistic. You know, in the pension world, we think you have to really think about behavioral effects, and one way to get people to do something is to nudge them. Well, I think the European Commission and the EU could nudge strongly, maybe even vigorously, member states to get into action. And there are different ways of doing that, but you know, there's this idea of having a pension dashboard that should make crystal clear to everybody how your system compares, what the prospects are, so that policymakers and people can see how good or bad the picture is. And then there are also other ways of stimulating reforms. We've seen an increased use of conditionality by the European Commission, you know, a quid pro quo when doling out European funding. And we know that, or we have read in Politico that the von der Leyen Commission is thinking of using this tool more often. So perhaps, you know, when thinking about reforms, they can take a comprehensive view to pension reforms. I think they shouldn't you know, force any particular model top down on member states, because as Beate correctly says, you have 27 different systems, so you need a case by case approach. But you know, the EU can explore where it has power to stimulate and nudge member states. It should use that.
Yeah. And Eve, actually, I mean, quoting what Eve said, he said that, you know, there's no perfect solution. Every country is different, and you need to develop them. I think what he meant is that you need to develop every system in the way that they need to be developed. So realizing the challenges and then finding the right solutions. We are running out of time, but any final comments on the EU? First from Carolina and Stephanie. Of course, you have a broader take than just Europe. You're looking at the global developments, but if you want to say something about Europe, please. Carolina.
Yes. Okay, sure. I could not agree more with what Matthijs has said. Of course, I think there is momentum. I believe that having a saving and investment unions give us the idea of what the Commission has in mind in order to actually boost and enhance pensions and actually savings in the union. And maybe we could hope for a increase cross-border activity through some label national products, like a bottom-up instead of a top-down idea. Also, the pension dashboard has already been mentioned, but other measures that could be added to these tax incentives are adding a criterion for granting public contracts, or a transitional contributions from personal pension plans when there is after an occupational pension plan. And as I think it was, I don't know if it's Stephanie or Beate, harness vulnerable groups with customized incentives, like, for example, for self-employed people. And thank you very much for having me here in any case.
Thank you. And Stephanie, any final comment from the point of view of OECD?
So maybe not directly reacting on what the EU or the European Commission should or should not do, but reacting to what Beate said, that in her view, the European Commission could be used as a forum to share ideas and experiences. Please, you are all welcome to the OECD also to come and discuss and share ideas and discuss what is working, why it's working, what is not working, why it is not working. All this sharing our experiences is how we actually build our work and build our recommendation. And well, the good thing of the OECD is that we are wider than Europe, so we can actually build on the experiences of other countries. So you're all most welcome to come and participate in our discussions.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. So this brings our webinar, the European Retirement Week 2024 webinar to an end. I wish to thank all of the speakers, Stephanie, Beate, Carolina, Matisse, and Yves. Excellent discussion. I wish to thank everybody who participated in this event, and I'm sure we will come back next year. There will be European Retirement Week 2025, end of November, and we'll see then what Pensions Europe will do next year. But thank you all for today, and I wish you a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you, Matti.
Bye.